Good morning, Millennial Morticians. Happy Wednesday morning. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of this incredible podcast. I know you could have chosen to be anywhere, but today you decided to be with us, and for that, I am grateful. Today, I have a special guest, someone who's full of wisdom, and I had the wonderful opportunity to meet him at the NFDA convention with so many of you. His name is Mr. Jason Buchbinder from SCI. Thanks for joining us today, Mr. Buchbinder.
Well, thank you for having me, Jaden. It is an absolute pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you so much. I know you're busy, so I'm going to jump right into it. Many millennials and Gen Z professionals are exploring where they belong in this profession. Why do you believe millennial morticians should be or should consider partnering or pursuing a career with SCI?
Great question, Jaden, and thank you for asking. Number one, I love the question. And let me just tell you, they belong. Without question, they absolutely belong, and they belong in every aspect of our business. And so I'm glad to be having this conversation with you. And I certainly would like to speak to how they might find their success with SCI. But it's really more important for them to recognize that they're going to be able to find their success anywhere in the industry, as long as it's something that they have a passion for. So passion really is the foundation, and the desire to grow and develop is going to allow them incredible success for their future. So I wanted to start there. As it relates to Service Corporation International, as opposed to maybe, smaller independents, consolidators, et cetera, when you take a look at the 60 plus years that SCI has been in business, you will find that in many ways they've written the book. They've written the rules and the regulations in the industry, and most firms have basically operated their business based on the foundations that SCI has created. In fact, as you do your homework, you'll find most folks actually cut their teeth at some point earlier in their career working for a Service Corporation International business. But when speaking to the millennial workforce, one of the things that is incredibly important that I hear from them is they want alignment, right? They want to have a voice. They're looking for partnership. They're looking for culture. They're looking for the opportunity, of course, to succeed. And what SEI does, which a lot of folks don't quite understand, is that we have 1,900 locations. And so I have the great opportunity to work with the 25,000 people across the country. And what's so cool about it is in those 1,900 locations, you have 1,900 mentors. You have 1,900 coaches. You have 1,900 leaders. And so systems in a large public company might be normalized all the way through the business. Culture is not. And so you have the opportunity as a millennial driver, I believe, to make the decision on where you want to go and pick that leadership, pick that mentor. And so I think very globally. So if I have the opportunity to speak to a Jaden, I want to learn about them and what their drivers are, what their goals are, what type of environment they want to be in, because they may be in one market, but based on their expectations and what they're looking for, I might have a mentor that I think they're going to team up beautifully based upon those expectations. And so what can SCI do? Having 1,900 leaders allows me to have that conversation with someone to say, tell me about your goals and aspirations. And if you had the opportunity to pick the perfect leader, who would that be? Making that phone call and saying, Jaden, I have someone special I want to introduce you to, because it's that alignment, it's that relationship that's key. And so oftentimes when men and women leave organizations, no matter the age, it's usually the same reason. They just did not see eye to eye, right, with leadership. I'm giving them the opportunity to say, Jason, this is who and where I'd like to be. That provides them a huge funnel of opportunity. And that is why an organization our size is so successful, because we can marry those partners across America.
Wow, that's a beautiful thing, being able to bring people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different experiences together in the industry. And as you know, there's the older generation of the people in the industry are, slowly fading out, retiring, some unfortunately even passing away. And so being able to get that information to the next generation is important. It's an educational transfer. That's what I call it. That's taking place in the industry right now.
You're absolutely right. And so we have the benefit. SEI foundationally has created probably the most prolific training programs in the entire country. And so when I look at and I meet men and women in the industry with their own organizations, it's funny to see some of that in their business model and their plan. They've taken those best business practices and they've molded it right for themselves and their business, which is great. But really what it comes down to is cutting the teeth at SEI allows them the opportunity to see things at scale, to see things in a much larger environment. Our hope is they take that and they put themselves into it, right? They put their personality and their passion and they make it better, right? That's really what it comes down to. And that's, quite frankly, what the families deserve.
Absolutely, every time, because that's who we're here to serve. So out of that, what specific benefits and opportunities does SEI provide that help emerging leaders grow, develop, and thrive in today's changing funeral service landscape?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up. You use the term changing, and I think that's wildly important. Our business has changed and continues to change. There's foundational assets to this business, but for the most part, as the families change, the consumer trends change, we have to change along with it. We've seen that through recessions, and we have certainly seen that through COVID. You and I, we're human beings, right? We are affected by that. And the way we think has certainly changed. And certainly our industry is there. One of the things I have to speak to that I'm really proud of, in fact, oftentimes, I highlight SCI more as a data company, as a technological based company, as opposed to a cemetery and funeral business. We just happen to be in that business. And the reason for that is because we're using data and technology in a way that most organizations in our industry have never thought to do that. We have created homegrown systems. We have Dignity University, which is the largest, most successful training program in the industry. It is by far, I would say almost in some levels at an MBA level in schools, to make sure not just our millennial group, not just our X group, not just our baby boomers, anyone coming into the business is going to have the ability to learn what's happening on the ground right now, because it's constantly updated, it's constantly renewed, so that we have the opportunity to make sure, and this is important to funeral directors, to be able to explain all the options every time to that family based upon what we know is happening in the markets, right? Being out there in front. That training and development program is by far the single most successful aspect, I think, of our organization. In the sales space, we have the best sales training program by far that, quite frankly, could be replicated in businesses outside of our space altogether. We have an entire training team. That's all they do. They train the incoming individual and they provide adult training throughout the life of their career, because we believe a professional is a professional. And just like an accountant, just like a lawyer, just like a doctor who continually has to go back, get credits and learn, we're doing exactly the same thing. And so having a strong adult learning program allows anybody in our organization voluntarily to go back to school, quote unquote, and learn, and then bring that back into their environment, which is really very, very exciting. And then I would say this, the leadership advocates that education, because you made a point earlier, legacy is not, it's not built on money. It's not built on dollar signs. It's not built on what did you do last week. Legacy is built upon taking Jaden by the hand and make him the next generation of leadership. And so another area that we are incredibly successful is we have mentor-mentee programs across the country, homegrown and at a national level that comes out of Houston. So we have many people at any given time going through a special program. I have a gentleman that I'm mentoring now, and I got to tell you, I'm learning probably more than he is. He's educating me. But the exciting thing is that we have more people in our company right now. This is so cool, Jaden, who are signing up to be mentors and signing up to be mentees. There is a desire, there is a want, and we're making sure that we own up to that and we provide that. And here's the neat thing. We have an entire program that's backing it up to make sure us mentors are doing the right thing by the mentees to make sure that they're lining up for those next careers at the end of the day. Oftentimes, Jaden, we think someone has a certain path, right?
Right.
And through this process, we're learning they may have a different path altogether by asking the right questions, by being deliberate and being honest and having integrity and making sure that this person who says they want to go here, that we actually set up those building steps, those stones for them to get there. And so what does that do? Creates better loyalty at the end of the day and better alignment, better relationship, obviously better integrity, right? Because we're all focused on that alignment, that one goal. And you do all of that, here's the end result. End result, family love you because you're doing the right thing every day, every time. And so for us, I think it really comes down to understanding that the change in families requirements are there and that we have to be a step above. We need to understand that. And then we need to make sure that the men and women in our business are obviously having the opportunity to be educated on that. And that is going to be our future success. So as that generation, as you talked about, starts to retire,
Right.
the legacy is we're going to have those men and women that can step up into those roles just like that, not lose a beat, but, and more powerfully, do something different because they're going to be bringing a level of curiosity and creativity that some of us may not have. So we're excited about the future. I got to tell you, the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years, oh my goodness, I see it as like this renaissance period of time. And a lot of that is because, Jaden, really folks like yourself that are coming out of school, because you're coming up with some incredible concepts that, need to be employed, in this environment. And I got to tell you, and again, and I know pride might be a bad word, but I'm so proud of the men and women in leadership now. They're saying, hey, Jaden, tell us what you think, right? Tell us maybe what you've learned and what you've gathered and what's coming from the house so that we can take those things and we can employ them in our business. That is going to be our success by opening up that conversation, allowing that creativity to come in the door to take care of more families in the future.
That's a beautiful thing. And just seeing how businesses are going to start start thinking outside of just it being a business and just it being a job. We're taking away those walls and creating something that's deeper where you can get a little bit of everything that you need, like you would at the funeral home, but on a personal level in your company.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that they understand when they walk in the door, this is not a 9-to-5 role, but not in a context that you want to talk about schedule. It's about understanding that this is a part of you. It starts here and it goes here second. But I believe, and I have for 18 years now, it starts in your heart and then goes to your head. When those two align, it's not about schedules anymore, right? It's not about 9 to 5. It's not about being on call. That's all secondary. This comes down to being here and being a part of something very special, very, very unique. And I talk to hundreds of people throughout the year that are considered entering our business. And I always start off with that. If you look at this as a job, don't call me. I'm not interested. But if you find purpose and you find meaning and you've got the right heart in the right place, I'm going to take you by the hand and I'm going to show you something that you never thought possible. And that's what's really, really important for not only our leadership here at SCI, but leadership across the industry, is if they're having challenges with talent, they need to take a step back and they need to ask themselves the question is, what is it they're really trying to accomplish? And are they secure in themselves to say, Jaden, I want to show you everything. I want you to be wildly successful. They do that. Oh my goodness, look out. Because again, it comes down to who we serve. Those families are going to receive service like they wouldn't believe.
Wow. That is a beautiful, beautiful thing. When scaling a business or developing teams in this industry, how do you maintain growth and efficiency while preserving people first culture of care?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question. Culture starts on the ground. It starts with leadership. And so I've got 1,900 culture centers. So at the end of the day, here's how we do this. First and foremost, as I was saying earlier, there are systems in place. There's normalcy that you'll find in corporate companies, that have multiple locations. The key starts, first of all, with leadership. And so leadership has to have a value center. You need to understand what it is that they're looking to accomplish. Because, Jaden, you and I know that in corporate America, things can get lost in translation, right?
Very quickly.
and talent gets lost even more. And so how does that work? Well, first and foremost, it's not my job, Jaden, to tell a leader how to run their business. Not my job, and I don't do it. I'll ask them questions to try to understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish. So if we see growth in a particular area, we're going to go in, and that conversation could be different than the other 1,900 or 1,899 conversations I've had, because it's unique and it's different. So although I can encourage and influence, we have to understand what it is that they have as a goal, the market, the families they serve, because it's all very unique, right? And so it goes down to the same way we hire people, is we don't want to speculate that a leader says, well, I just want a funeral director, and Jason goes out and director. I don't know anything about that business, right? So it really starts her to understand what that culture looks like and what that leader is trying to do. And so the key is, when having a conversation with leadership, they're going to say, yeah, Jason, we see growth exponentially here in X city, whatever that looks like. All right, wonderful. Okay, so we agree, we want growth. That's an easy thing. The hard part is, now tell me about your culture, and let's talk about how we'll identify talent to make sure that happens for you. What I find, our leadership is fantastic, very open to that conversation. But sometimes they don't know what it is that they're looking for. And so we have to kind of fill in those gaps, if you would. But when it comes to being effective and efficient, it always starts with that dialogue, is the expectation on the ground. If we have that answer, we can go ahead and be highly efficient, highly effective, and drive the right people into that business. But like I said, I can have 10 calls in a day, and it all has different outcome expectations. But the outcome expectations obviously will meet corporate satisfaction as well. And it happens through making sure that the right people in the right seats on the bus doing the right things every day, right? And so it requires thinking. It requires a very good village behind you as well. And one of the things that we do so very well here at SCI, between HR, talent acquisition, training, everybody's in that village to make sure that when we're having a conversation with Jordan about his team, and we're saying this is the goal moving forward, everyone's making sure that we are fulfilling Jordan's goal, not our own. That's how you become highly effective, highly successful. And you do that, you're going to get the outcomes that you're looking for on both sides of the fence, both operationally and talent-wise.
That's beautiful. So with that being said, over the next 5 to 10 years, what major shifts do you anticipate in leadership, hiring, and innovation across funeral services?
Oh, my goodness. It's already started. It is going to have huge seismic shifts in the next few years. We're all anticipating it. Some out there are scared. I hear them at the conventions chatting about, hey, what's going to happen? We take a very different road of thought. We're very, very positive and very excited because, number one, we have a bench. That is one of the things, because of scale and size. We have funeral directors across North America that are saying, hey, with a little bit more training, a little bit more support, X, Y, and Z, I'm ready for that leadership role, right? Now, interestingly enough, I will tell you, less people since COVID are willing to move and relocate, but we anticipate the farther we go out of COVID, we're going to see more and more folks feeling a little bit more confident and move about the country, as the airline might say. So we feel great about that. Because we have Dignity University, they're learning not to be a funeral director, because that's what you went to school for.
Correct.
They're obviously in the tactical side, obviously in the funeral home, But more importantly, what we're doing is we're training them to take over locations. We're training them to be leaders. We're training them to have financial, prowess, to understand how the books are arranged, to understand how a funeral home makes money, to understand expense management, leadership, etc. So we take a very, very smart approach, very strategic approach, very positive approach, and are working on that right now, knowing the next 10 years is going to be quite amazing. We know we're going to see more and more retirements, and good, bad, or indifferent. So we are focused on it right now, working on that very, very hard across North America. And so we say, bring it on, Jaden. We say, come on, guys, we are ready to go. Now, that said, not everyone has the vision of being in leadership, and that's fine too. Doesn't mean we're not going to give them all the provisions and everything they need to be wildly successful. But I want to tell you today, if your audience is saying, I'm working in a small environment, maybe it's family owned, the legacy is they may, provide it to the firstborn. I don't know if I can gain leadership. That's understood. We see that quite a bit. Give us a call and let's have a conversation. One house isn't necessarily better than another, but if we can offer a few different houses, again, that can give you that rabbit trail, we're here to help without question. That's why you see us marketing for those roles. So, lastly, what I would say is this, Jaden, is the generation, that millennial generation, your audience, is crucial to our success moving forward. Just absolutely crucial. We are very, very excited of the men and women that represent our organization and those that are still coming in. Their future is so incredibly bright. And the neat thing is all the things they're bringing, all the ideas and concepts are just going to make funeral service better at the end of the day, right? They're the ones saying, hey, maybe we need to change the inside of our funeral home. Hey, maybe we should offer these type of things, right? Maybe we should do this. And so some of the services I'm seeing and experiences that are coming from this group are so conceptualized so beautifully. And when you see the notes from the families, I'm thinking, I would have never thought that, or that would never happened, right? And it's exciting to see that. So the future of funeral service, incredibly bright. I also know that we're seeing more students now coming through the schools. There was a lull there for a while. They're now coming back in, which is great. That just means we need to continue to be proactive on the forefront and encouraging folks, even at the high school level, to think about what that future looks like and driving some of those folks in. And that's where we also see our younger generation, like yourself, sir, being a big support, because they're going to see people like you and they're going to want to emulate you, right? We know that. I'm out of my prime, right? So what we need is ultimately more folks like yourself to get out in front. Your podcast certainly helps. But I got to tell you, there is no anxiety on my part about what the future is going to look like. We are not concerned about not having staff, serve our families. And those that are, there's something, maybe amiss in that model. But our model is so firm and so strong. And that's why when you meet people in the industry that are executives, ask them where they started. Ask them where they began their career. Ask them where they cut their teeth. You're going to find 90% of them came through Service Corporation International, and that's what drove them to be who they are in leadership in our industry today. And so I can't deny that, right? You can't deny that fact. And I must say, we're only getting better. We're only getting stronger. And need I say, it's only the beginning, Jaden. It's only the beginning.
That's the best part.
That's the best part. And quite frankly, it's going to happen because of people like you. We know that. And so we're excited. We're excited to team up with you and your partners in any way, because the future is really bright for all of us. And I'm excited to be a part of it in the next 10, 15 years.
Well, from the Millennial Mortician Podcast, I can tell you now, we greatly appreciate that, the love, the support, and the fact that we are making an impact bigger than what we know, what we see from our end. Because at the conventions is when you really get to get everyone together and get people
Right.
excited about it.
That's right.
So for students, for young professionals beginning their careers, what single leadership habit or mindset would you encourage them to cultivate early on in their career?
Absolutely. So oftentimes people talk about the word integrity. And, honesty, of course, is there, but integrity is something a little bit different. You may have heard integrity is one of those things that, you want people catching you when you're not paying attention, doing things right.
Right.
As a leader, as a parent, you're moving in 100 different directions. But really, if you have integrity, your children and or your peers are looking and saying, interesting, I was spying on Jason and he was doing it right. And they're going to follow you. They're going to replicate your efforts. They're going to make sure that from the time you shook hands and said, hey, join my team, that these folks are going to be watching you, right? Every step, the things you say, the things that you do, wildly important. So there are two things that I would ask them to do is, number one, really, really stand tall. Do the things that you're going to do. Have integrity. And this is why I said two things. More importantly, expect your mentor to have integrity. Oftentimes people leave companies because of their mentor. We know that they come for the boss, they stay for the boss, and leave for the boss. We know that data to be absolutely true. And they're leaving that toxicity for a reason. And oftentimes it's because, Jaden, that leader lost integrity. They did not do the things they were supposed to do. And so we decide to leave and find a different environment where we can gain that. So I always start there, and I start there on purpose. If an individual doesn't work in an environment where the leadership is doing what they're saying they need to do, time to leave. Make a change. If you don't believe you're in an environment where you can have integrity, it's time to leave and make a change. So that's where I focus. I think that is incredibly important. Number two, empathy, absolutely important, right? And I think we already know that. I don't think I have to go into that. But value, respect, partnership, alignment. I can tell you, Jaden, I've spoken to thousands of people over the years, and ultimately it comes down to alignment. And when you look for a new relationship, both personal and professional, alignment is absolutely everything. So when I coach young folks coming into this business, I tell them to be direct and upfront with the expectations that they have for their business. Don't make anybody guess. And in leadership, you have to do absolutely the same. That's the difference between being a tenured associate and staying, or someone leaving in 2 to 3 months, right? And a lot of it is because they didn't create alignment on the front end. So I would make sure that a person is direct and honest and upfront about their expectations, right, so that we don't fail at the end of the day. Lastly, work ethic. Let's talk about work ethic for a moment. This comes down to alignment as well, is being direct about, your expectations and what it is that you want to accomplish. I know that there is generational thought differences right now in the marketplace. And so everyone defines work ethic a little bit differently, and that's fine. So what I would say is this: define what that means for you and what that looks like. Again, that's alignment. That's why I love talking to folks like Jaden and having that conversation up front, because once I know what Jaden's really made of, I can find a leader or a mentor that thinks the same way, right? We do that. What happens? Well, you're in an environment where your happiness index is higher. You go in and you notice culturally, everyone is thinking and doing the same thing. Everyone's on a mission, because you don't want to be in a culture where that alignment is off or that work ethic is thought differently, where you can be demoralized very easily. So what am I saying? I'm cutting down on all the known challenges that we have in the workplace by just